There were hints in the Frieza saga by Nail that the Nameless Namekian could have easily defeated Frieza if Piccolo remained fused in his original form. And also Guru believed that only a Super Saiyan could defeat the Nameless Namekian prodigy. And we soon find out later in the Android saga that the speculations were to be true. For the Nameless Namekian finally returns after all these years. Due to Piccolo's defeat by the androids and Kami's discovering of another evil entity called Cell, both came to terms that they should become one once again. And it is even implied by both that their power would be incredible if they joined back together. And so, it was to be true. And we can make a very strong bet that at that time he currently had the power to defeat that Cell. But it's definitely a debatable topic if he could have damaged Android 17 enough to defeat him before he ran out of juice. When the Nameless Namekian makes his grand return, he refers to himself initially as neither Kami nor Piccolo, but the Namekian who has long since forgotten his true name. I mean Piccolo. Which kind of makes everyone happy, as Piccolo's mind and body were the dominant parts of the fusion. Much like Piccolo's thinking with Nail, it's not like he was called Pica-Nail, Kamiolo, or Pikami, or in the anime, Kamikolo. When they combined, the original Dragon Balls also disappeared because Piccolo's being is not the guardian of Earth with the Dragon Balls, and it's assumed the reunited Nameless Namekian is now a warrior type where only dragon types can make the Dragon Balls such as Dende. There's a fun fact in Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors that full power could actually be unlocked if Piccolo Jr. fuses with Kami and King Piccolo, and in doing so, Piccolo knew that evil would have to re-enter his heart. Supersonic Warriors has some interesting dialogue with Piccolo's power even rivaling Majin Buu. The story of what we consider to be the Nameless Namekian continues in the form of Piccolo as we know him today. Many seem to forget that he is officially the closest thing to the Nameless Namekian we will ever get now. But in terms of differences, interestingly, this means the old Nameless Namekian was a Dragon Clan type, but his reunited self is now a warrior type, and is due to Piccolo Jr. being a warrior type and the main bulk of the entity. Does this truly mean that he is now the Nameless Namekian, or just an enhanced Piccolo Jr.? This is very interesting. Wisdom-wise, due to each entity having their own experiences, their combined knowledge plus Nails makes him far more intelligent than even his old combined self. But it is unknown what personality traits the Nameless Namekian once had before splitting originally. But now, he has a fondness for the planet Earth, which was likely strengthened by Kami's role as a guardian, but power-wise, due to Piccolo Jr. becoming stronger through the years, combining with that of Nail 2, that part of the Nameless Namekian had to be stronger than the original one before they split. Krillin refers to the combination as a Super Namekian, rivaling that of Super Saiyan. There is speculation that the Nameless Namekian was once a Super Namekian before separating, and what does this mean? Perhaps a level of strength? Or an additional type on top of Dragon and Warrior types? Perhaps the birth of a Super Namekian means that they are seen as prodigies to the Namekian people. Think about it, if the Nameless Namekian was originally a Dragon type Namekian, just like Dende, how the hell was his power so high? We would expect that level of power to be fitting for a Warrior type. He is truly something special, and has truly been ignored. Imagine Dende with the power of a Super Saiyan, it's insane. Super Namekians must be prodigies, and we have to realize this, competing to be Earth's guardian, he was powerful as hell, potentially stronger than Frieza, if not beyond Super Saiyan levels. We don't know the full extent of his max power before separating, but we know he achieved that power by just sitting and waiting for a miracle. And what's badass is that Nail believed this knowing only what Guru knows, and that was everything up until the Nameless Namekian was 19 years old and still looking like a kid. That was the last time they saw him, at 19 years old, and even then, their speculation believes it's stronger than Frieza. So how the hell strong he got on Earth 30 years later is scary to think. For all we know, the original embodiment of the Nameless Namekian could have been stronger than Perfect Cell or Majin Buu. We don't know. Perhaps his original whole being was stronger than even the Piccolo we know now because of the original parts being Kami and King Piccolo. We can say King Piccolo and Piccolo Jr. are one and the same, but really, they are not. And maybe that is truly the missing link to the true potential of the Nameless Namekian's power. And right now, he may not really be the true Nameless Namekian. Perhaps there's a reason why his memory was somewhat lost once he arrived on Earth. Or is there something else he has been hiding all of his life, covering it up? The true past of the Nameless Namekian living for 19 years on planet Namek is still one of the most mysterious Dragon Ball stories of all time. And just like his supposed memory, his legacy has totally been forgotten by most of the fandom. We look at the examples in OG Dragon Ball and Z to establish what the connection between Piccolo and Kami means in terms of their power level, and why they are unaffected by power and age changes despite one die-in takes away the other's life force energy. And I know you'll enjoy this one. Now, throughout the original Dragon Ball, particularly the 22nd and 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai arcs, King Piccolo and Piccolo Jr. were a center focus of opposition to Goku, but something interesting happened during the King Piccolo arc. Piccolo wished to restore his youth and return to his prime. In that same arc, we also see King Piccolo laying eggs, which affects his life force and ages him each time. But what effect did this have on Kami at the time? There are some that argue that in the King Piccolo arc, Kami's lifespan was significantly shortened by King Piccolo laying so many eggs. But we'll address all that with the facts right here now. When it comes to Kami, we first see him very old, and we know he didn't lay any eggs. When King Piccolo did that, it really didn't accelerate Kami's age like some think. And Kami didn't just become old when he split with the evil part years ago. Let's look at their lifespans. When it comes to a Namekian's lifespan, we do have an indication of how long they live. Namek's cataclysm happened in age 261. The Nameless Namekian was a child back then, and in age 753, 500 years later, we first see Kami looking really old. We know Dende grows from very small to taller than Mr. Popo in 7 years. When we saw flashbacks of the Nameless Namekian, he was somewhere in the middle of their height, so their lifespan is about 500 to 600 years in my opinion. Different clans have different lifespans, and in Dragon Ball Daima, Pansy states the average lifespan of a demon in the third world is about 1000 years. So Namekians are kind of at the bottom of the ladder, the lower threshold of age, and it's possible Namekians lost some of their average lifespan after millions of years in the living world after escaping the demon world. Some seem to think that King Piccolo's wish for his youth was actually about regaining his former physical strength, not his lifespan. They think that's why Kami stayed old. But this is false because it actually states King Piccolo wished for his youth and physical prime. This didn't affect Kami's age at all. Now if they are both linked in life force, and King Piccolo's life force was extended, and even returning his health to his physical prime, why wasn't Kami any younger? Why didn't his life force change, or his power in general? First of all, we can address the fact that King Piccolo didn't really gain any extra power after the wish. He just became younger and his body was in better shape to use his power consistently. Whereas when he was old, he would still flatten Goku. He would choose his fights more wisely when his body was ready to use that power. It's not a myth that the last thing a boxer loses as he gets older is his punching power. It's just he can't use it as often. But King Piccolo can reach his maximum power by shortening his own lifespan, which isn't a controversial power method we used to see in these days. The whole thing when it comes to King Piccolo losing life after giving birth or going full power may have something to do with his demonic arts, like he's doing something with his magic to make himself stronger than he normally could, but sacrificing his own life force to do it, as well as sacrificing some of himself to make demonic children who are not just typical Namekians, they are slaves who will obey his every command. He could feel exactly when they got killed because he's connected his life force to them in some way, like a branch on a tree. But if you cut off the branch, it's not the main trunk. Now it's obvious Kami and King Piccolo don't share physical bodies, so that explains why Kami still had wrinkles when King Piccolo was younger. But they do share the life force, yet it comes with a twist. It only affects the other if the life force is about to be fully diminished. As seen when Piccolo Jr. sacrificed himself against Nappa, he was still alive talking to Gohan, but Kami was suffering elsewhere because Piccolo was about to die. We also see it in the Garlic Jr. saga in the anime too, where Kami's life force is being tampered with by those crazy gods underneath the lookout, messing up with Piccolo in his fight on the lookout against Garlic Jr. However, if Piccolo's fighting, Kami isn't in physical pain. He doesn't feel the same punches, but he does suffer from the life force leaving him. Now it has to be real close to death, and I mean death imminent, otherwise Kami remains and doesn't feel a thing. Even if Piccolo has a death beam through his chest lying unconscious on planet Namek, Kami was fine, whereas against Nappa, death was coming fast and Kami could really feel it. Linking back to King Piccolo and him creating Piccolo Jr., that egg was very special because King Piccolo put everything of his life force into that egg, basically creating a copy of himself. Whereas if Goku's punch wasn't going to kill him, that egg definitely would have, because he transferred everything into it. So that's why Piccolo Jr. is basically King Piccolo. And it proves there's different levels of eggs to create. But now let's talk about Piccolo's training and him improving his energy, yet Kami's energy remains the same. Now life force is an interesting concept, but it does link to ki, that being 1/3 of a person's total ki. It's officially stated by Akira Toriyama that ki is made up of mindfulness, health, and courage. It's literally mind, body, and spirit, where if you take the spirit bomb for example, characters give up their genki, which is their life force, to the spirit bomb. It's the physical part of the ki, the vigor, the health part. They don't give their courage or right-mindedness to the spirit bomb. Now when you consider this, If they share the life force part of the ki, why doesn't Kami's vigor part of the ki get stronger when Piccolo gets insanely stronger during Dragon Ball Z training, particularly training for the Saiyans, training with King Kai, and even fusing with Nail? Of course, Piccolo's total ki increases in all three areas, so his health part of the ki definitely increased over time. Basically, Piccolo and Kami's life energy is linked, but when the Nameless Namekian's life force was split, they became different in their own way. The best way is to compare it to an apple tree. The life force is the tree, but there's a big branch which grows 2 apples. One fruit on the branch may be huge, juicy, always grows well, but the other part of the branch, the apples don't grow as big or juicy. In this case, Piccolo's got better apples than Kami, but if someone cuts the main branch, both apples suffer. If you could make a better comparison, tell me in the comments, I'd love to hear, but I think you know where I'm coming from. Basically, it's only when their life force is actually disappearing that the other is affected. Otherwise, they live separate lives as 2 separate people until it happens. Even though they share the same life force, the soul is still split, like 2 halves of a whole soul that can't live without the other. And that's backed up by the fact Kami was actually there at King Yama's after Piccolo was killed by Nappa. They both went there, but Kami refused to travel Snake Way, so I guess the souls are separate but still linked. Almost like a curse. Now in the Android saga, when Piccolo finally merges back with Kami, it's almost similar to Namekian fusion that Piccolo uses with Nail, but not exact. Yes, Piccolo took Nail's life force and permanently merged it with his own, but they weren't always originally one, whereas the Nameless Namekian's life force was a 50-50 split at the time, so when re-merging, the power-up essentially comes from doubling their life force. Not because Kami's power level of around 200 is much of a difference at that point in the Android saga, it's just hard to equate life force to power levels. But we know by using even a bit of life force to fight, characters like Tien can even hold back Semi-Perfect Cell, despite the power level difference. Life force is that deadly, so double life force really is a huge deal, as Piccolo could then square off against Android 17, and we know not even 10 Piccolos pre-Kami could take on Android 17 in the Android saga, so double life force doesn't equal double power level. Like, think of Moro. He doesn't immediately get stronger than Goku and Vegeta after absorbing all their energy because he was absorbing Genki, the health part of Goku and Vegeta's ki, not the total package ki that they can create with all 3 components of ki. Moro doesn't absorb courage ki. And that's it for Piccolo and Kami's connection. It literally is that, a connection, 2 different lights on a circuit board, but both requiring power or life in order for the other one to stay alive. But you can simply swap the bulb for a stronger bulb to signify one gets stronger if you want to. Actually, that's a better comparison than the tree one. Piccolo had a power stated to be 3,500 or thereabouts in the guides. Interestingly, in many chapters later, King Kai mentions to Goku, who is headed to Namek, that he has some guests on his planet, which is Piccolo, Tien, Yamcha, and Chaozu. Interestingly, they cleared Snake Way quicker than Goku, and wanted training even tougher than what Goku received. 10 days to fix the Nameless Namekian ship, 30ish days in some guides for Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma to get to Namek. Goku left Earth, which took 6 days. Either way, we aren't even looking at 2 months worth, I don't think, which is awesome speed for Piccolo and the others to get to King Kai. Secondly, we must note, King Kai says they want training, which implies they haven't had any yet. It's just been the traveling to get there. What's crazy is that Piccolo tells Goku he will have enough power soon and be even stronger than him, and they'll have no trouble stopping Frieza. Now at this moment, I just want to say that Piccolo is known for new levels of power getting to his head. This is Piccolo Jr. by the way, not the Piccolo Nail Kami fusion, just good old Piccolo Jr. I think this was all a front, a boast, but then again, this is Piccolo. Perhaps he is confident in his potential. So Piccolo, we could say, was training with King Kai for approximately 6 days, as he was later revived on pretty much the same day Goku arrived on Namek. Now we see Frieza take on Nail, with Nail being stated that his power level was 42,000. Frieza states his power level of 530,000, which Nail reacts to, and you can see his face, with concern, and tells me as a reader he knows the difference in the power. Let's be honest, he experiences his power as well, and gets destroyed. Now this is where it gets interesting even more, because the moment before Piccolo gets revived, he is speaking to Gohan and states the following: I want to fight. I want to fight on my home world against Frieza, who slaughtered my people. Now, first of all, this dialogue shows passion and care for his people. It's called a warrior's pride, no matter how hopeless the situation. Fight until there's nothing left inside, for the right cause. This doesn't mean he will win, but he straight away follows up with, I've gained great power in the underworld and I will defeat him. Take me there. Now we need to consider Piccolo's ego at this point. I do not doubt in the slightest that he obtained power in 6 days at King Kai's. He did. It must have been some intense training session. Piccolo did indeed get stronger, and perhaps a little more than he thought. Would this affect his confidence in being able to take and defeat Frieza at this stage? I think the power amp would play with his confidence a little. Heck, even arrogance. Like I said, this is Piccolo Jr., he's prone to being a cocky dude in battle if he's stronger. It's further backed up when he's revived and goes towards Nail, and after he and Nail fuse, Piccolo reacts to the new bulk of power, and that says it all. This is power, I can win this, no matter who the opponent may be, and he flies off, laughing. Typical Piccolo Jr. Look, all I'm saying is, it's clear Piccolo gets ahead of himself before testing out the opponent and seeing their real power. He's in the moment of his own glory. Now why am I discussing that? It's because we can't instantly assume he's close to Frieza's 530,000 before fusing with Nail. There are tons of factors. But how do we gauge his power before this moment? He's totally digging the fact he can win with Nail compared to the power he thought he had previous. There is no information stating if Piccolo is stronger than Nail. All that's said is Nail saying that he's obtained unbelievable power, and it can be inferred that he's obtained unbelievable power in relation to what he was before. It doesn't necessarily mean Piccolo had surpassed Nail, but it's hinting it could have been. That's debatable. But we know from the dialogue that Piccolo and Nail both know they aren't at Frieza's power, nowhere near that 530,000, and by this point, both of them know the feeling of that power because Piccolo sensed it when he arrived on Namek. But he still flew towards the raging Frieza anyway, and to me, Piccolo's either totally insane for doing this, or he's going to protect Gohan because he cares for him, or he does have some sort of plan because he would be a bit of an idiot to ask to get revived for the sake of the Dragon Balls, only to fly aimlessly towards a power he knew he couldn't overcome. So to me, this decision to fly towards Frieza, where if he was too strong, he could have used a plan B and escaped somehow to use the Earth's Dragon Balls later, unless at this point Piccolo's passion for the dying Namekians was too strong and he had this massive urge to fight Frieza until death. Perhaps he even used the Dragon Balls excuse to get him revived quicker. We know Piccolo to be a bit of a liar to get what he wants. I feel based on who Piccolo is, he did indeed get a huge boost. Heck, maybe even 10 times of what he was on Earth. And that played on his confidence. But I think the biggest clue to know roughly where Piccolo's power lays is in his reaction to Frieza's power. His face says it all when he arrived on Namek. Let's say Piccolo was half of Frieza's strength. This face of Piccolo's wouldn't be the face of someone detecting double the power. Piccolo has fought guys triple his power in the past. This face is telling me, as a reader, that Piccolo is sensing Frieza's power to be monstrous compared to his own. Absolutely monstrous. Maybe even 10 times of his. If I had to make any sort of guess, I would say Piccolo was actually closer to Nail's power than we think, give or take a few thousand. But if Piccolo didn't have the power to beat Frieza head on, what was his plan? How did he expect to kill Frieza knowing his own power and wanting to be wished back? Well guys, we know exactly what Piccolo is capable of. Let's go back to the Saiyan saga where we saw something very interesting about battle power, and that is his special beam cannon, when focused, makes his battle power much higher, and judging by Saiyan saga power levels, 1330 for the special beam cannon divided by his fighting power of 408 gives approximately 3.2 increase in power. I had this one theory that Piccolo had an ace up his sleeve in story terms, and that was to perform another replica of his special beam cannon against a held Frieza, if that could have ever happened. Piccolo had no knowledge of Frieza's anatomy. Little did Piccolo know that Frieza can survive being sliced up, so this tactic would have fallen flat straight away if he tested it, but the fact that he had the capability to basically triple his battle power for one move gave him this fighting chance in his own head. Let's say for example that Piccolo managed to supercharge his special beam cannon and launch it at the same power as Frieza's 530,000. We could divide that by 3 roughly to give us approximately 170,000 for Piccolo's fighting power. But this doesn't feel right to me. Could Piccolo have had 170,000 after King Kai's training? Would it even be possible for him to gain an approximate 48 times increase in strength in 6 days? It seems crazy because that would mean he's near the power of Goku when he displayed his power against Ginyu, and this is Goku who trained with King Kai for months, fought Vegeta, Zenkai boosts, trained in 100 gravity. Piccolo can't possibly be at Goku's level now on Namek, unless the 6-day training was a bigger ass pull than Resurrection F. Just kidding, nothing beats that. But we know Saiyan versus Namekian potential. We know this from examples of time chamber training. Goku and Piccolo both go into the time chamber in the Cell games, and Goku way surpasses Piccolo. At that point in Dragon Ball Z, it was the nature of the game. Saiyans had the training potential. I do not believe Piccolo was anywhere near 170,000 on Namek before Nail. I feel Piccolo knew Frieza was going to be a handful. But let's just say Piccolo was Nail's level. His special beam cannon would give him approximately 126,000 as a battle power, and I feel this would have been more in the right scale of Piccolo's power. A huge increase, but still shocked at feeling Frieza's monstrous power upon arriving, realizing he's in big trouble now, realizing the truth. I do have this feeling that Nail was insinuating that if the similar level of power Piccolo had fought Frieza, he would end up on the floor beaten up like him. That is all I'm able to gather regarding Piccolo pre-Nail fusion. Whatever the case, 6 days on King Kai's to get to the level of Nail is an insane jump. In my opinion, Piccolo was all hype and was all emotional about the murdered Namekians. First form Frieza would have crushed him if they fought like that. But there's no denying Piccolo's potential is incredible, even if he fell short of Nail's power after just 6 days with King Kai. Unless he drank some magic juice on Snake Way. Can't think of much else.
Oh yeah, power creeps.
Of course, we never see Piccolo, Yamcha, Tien, or even Chaozu utilize the Kaio-Ken after undergoing training similar to Goku, but what difference would it make in Dragon Ball Z and the Namek arc? Now, the website for Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, yes, some time ago, stated that King Kai takes on the training of Yamcha, Tien, Chaozu, and Piccolo using the same techniques that were successful with Goku. It is unknown whether this statement refers to teaching the Z fighters the Kaio-Ken and the Spirit Bomb techniques, or if it's just referring to King Kai's training techniques in general. However, Yamcha does use the technique in Xenoverse, as does Krillin, who trained under King Kai briefly after his death. Krillin also learns the technique from Goku in his What If saga in Supersonic Warriors. However, neither Tien, Chaozu, or Piccolo have ever been shown using the technique in any media. That's pretty much it for officially linking Kaio-Ken to the Z fighters through different continuities, but case in point, I think personally if Piccolo did have access to the Kaio-Ken on planet Namek, he would have damn well stacked it on top of the Nail fusion buff to help keep up with third form Frieza. That is, if he could have and wasn't at rope's end in terms of his own potential there. It's debated what level of power Piccolo was when arriving on Namek. Somewhere in between Nail and first form Frieza is always a safe bet, based on the statements and dialogue and how it's interpreted, but no matter where his power was, he was scared of Frieza's 500,000 battle power when sensing it upon arriving, and he did submit to Nail's request without that much of a debate, so we know he wasn't near Frieza's power at all. However, he was extremely confident in requesting to be wished back to take on Frieza. It could have been his burning desire, talking to avenge the Namekians. However, Piccolo was smart to know and would realize he'd just be getting wished back to die again anyway, which makes me believe Piccolo wouldn't waste a wish and definitely wouldn't be that confident unless he had a backup plan. And I think he was counting on his high-end power of the special beam cannon or something doing something to Frieza, even though he knew nothing about Frieza's anatomy and his survivability with wounds. The special beam cannon easily raises his power by ×3, but he was still shaken up on sensing Frieza, maybe more than he did when sensing Raditz's power, which was about the same magnitude of a gap, if we're going with Piccolo's fighting power being around 3 to 4 times less than base form Frieza. I mean, first form Frieza, making it somewhere between 130,000 to 180,000. So let's go with 150,000. Yes, that's a huge leap past Piccolo's Saiyan saga power in just 6 days of training with King Kai, I know, but this is Dragon Ball sometimes and we have to move fast to keep up with the plot. And if we're going with Piccolo knowing the Kaio-Ken in this What If storyline today, he's going to have to utilize a triple dose at least in order to stand up to Frieza. However, we still have good old Nail, which would be a spectacular upgrade to Piccolo now that he knows Kaio-Ken, and that's what's going to happen here. Piccolo gets nearly a 10 times boost sinking with Nail. Budokai 1 reference, sinking, yep, you got it. Putting him over 1,000,000 battle power, but from here, in his battle with second form Frieza, that would remain the same. I can personally see Piccolo removing the weighted clothes before he even tries Kaio-Ken, and based on Piccolo's shock, learning that Frieza could transform yet again, I still feel that Frieza would hit the third form, as that happened pretty damn quick. This is the battle where I feel it would be make or break. Whether events stay exactly the same because of Frieza's dominance, or Piccolo can prevail with the Kaio-Ken. If Piccolo had Kaio-Ken, there's no doubt he would resort to it, especially here when he's bested in power and speed. The problem we have is how much Kaio-Ken can Piccolo handle at this point. He's only been trained with King Kai for 6 days, and although it got a huge plot power-up, the experience with Kaio-Ken is still rookie levels. Where Goku had way more time to get to grips with the double Kaio-Ken, I feel anything from 1.1 to 2 times would be suitable for Piccolo's current experience, with a 3 times being the absolute desperation level that would really hurt himself. I said 1.1 times because Kaio-Ken doesn't have to go straight to ×2 or go up in single digits. King Kai just warned Goku about that double power being the limit for the sake of his own health. There's still power levels between base form and ×2, whether it's 25% stronger, 50% stronger. Kaio-Ken can do that. Anyway, Piccolo would be around 2 million here on Namek, using that Kaio-Ken ×2, but What's third form Frieza's power level? We know Frieza's 100% power is 120 million, so 1% would be 1.2 million. But that's around second form Frieza, right? Meaning Frieza's power is not strict to his final form, and his final form can still be at 1%, 1.2 million. It's just Frieza was fighting with at least 3% against Vegeta and Goku, so third form Frieza is potentially double second form Frieza, so around 2 million, and approximately 2% of Frieza's maximum capability on Namek. So this fight with Kaio-Ken times 2 Piccolo versus third form Frieza is going to be extremely close, give or take their power levels. Remember, I'm only guessing roughly, they could fluctuate. Third form Frieza may not even be 2 million, but I think this will be close and come down to two things: conditioning and time. Third form Frieza is far more stable at 2 million than Piccolo is with Kaio-Ken at 2 million. So it really depends on if Piccolo can pull off a ×3 and really hurt Frieza enough to get a deciding blow on him when he's down. Truth is, Frieza is very durable, so it's risky, but it would be the only way. Frieza would be very quick, and a special beam cannon, even with Kaio-Ken, would be futile, as even if it did hit, Frieza will likely still survive if the shock impact doesn't kill him. However, with help from Gohan and Krillin, and yes, Vegeta, Kaio-Ken times 3 Piccolo, or even Kaio-Ken 2.5, may be enough to overwhelm third form Frieza. Gohan did show some force in attacking third form Frieza, so with Piccolo's Kaio-Ken power, it may give them all an edge. Now from here, if Frieza is still dominant, he will most likely go to final form, but if Piccolo is winning, then I can see Piccolo interfering in the final transformation this time because he's confident he has the strength to take on Frieza and wouldn't let him transform again. Unlike in the original story, he was battered, bruised, and had no hope against Frieza. He was scared to death. It caused him to retreat and wait for Krillin to blast Vegeta. If the gang could overwhelm third form Frieza, especially with Dende still there to help heal Piccolo, there may be some chance to save Namek before Goku even wakes up. Either way, I can still see Krillin blasting Vegeta just in case, making Vegeta the strongest on the battlefield when he recovers, and if Piccolo is still fighting third form Frieza, Vegeta will no doubt end it this time. Making the situation on Namek very strange if Frieza is killed before going final form. It leaves Vegeta as the strongest right before Goku wakes up. This Vegeta, before his defeat at Frieza's hand, was quite dangerous in the sense that he believed he was a Super Saiyan. He could still look to establish dominance even though Frieza is out of the picture, and he could beat up Piccolo and the others as Vegeta was very unpredictable on Namek. He was only working with them all because Frieza was the bigger threat. However, there were times he showed a soul by saving Gohan against Frieza's death beam, so there may be enough respect from him there to spare them. I can't see him sabotaging Goku's healing pod if Frieza was defeated before Goku woke up. To be honest, Goku was pretty much 90% by that point in the healing pod, so even if Goku got out of there early, he's still likely to hold his ground against Vegeta if they were to battle, but I'll skip that what if battle between Goku and Vegeta on Namek under these circumstances and focus on that specific story in another video. So let's continue with Piccolo and what possible outcomes this would have in the original Dragon Ball Z arcs. It's hard not making these what if simply fanfiction the longer they go on because there are so many factors at play and could change everything, but in the original story, if Piccolo did have the Kaio-Ken and decided to pull it out of the bag at any time, let's see how it would fare in the original Z battles. When Frieza and King Cold arrived on Earth, I believe he would have trained more with the Kaio-Ken in that 1 to 2 years after Namek to access potentially a Kaio-Ken times 10, but this would barely help against a 50% Frieza. When it comes to preparing for the androids, he would absolutely squash Dr. Gero and Android 19 with a times 10 multiplier on top of his already hardened level. He did train with Super Saiyan Goku for 3 years. It would be very interesting how he fares against 17 and 18 in the mountains with the help of Vegeta and Trunks. Of course, Super Saiyan Vegeta was the strongest amongst them, but even Vegeta had respect for Piccolo's power against Dr. Gero, so Kaio-Ken may close a decent gap to help out, but I still think 17 and 18 working together would thrash all of them with the stamina advantage on top. The Z fighters didn't have enough deadly force to wipe out the 2 androids there and then. When it comes to Imperfect Cell, the Kaio-Ken wouldn't have made that much of a difference because Cell escaped anyway, even though Piccolo was stronger. But the fight against Android 17 would be much different. His times 10 power would cause serious harm to 17 to the point of incapacitating 17 altogether, preventing Cell from reaching his second form. It depends if Android 16 steps in, but I feel like Android 16 and the stronger Imperfect Cell would be a true test for Kaio-Ken times 10 Piccolo. Unless Piccolo with the Kami fusion has a strong enough body to handle a times 20, Piccolo may indeed dish out some hurting bombs and end the Cell saga right there, with Android 16 backing down due to Cell being the true threat. Even if Piccolo doesn't succeed against Imperfect Cell and the same events pan out,
Piccolo's Kaio-Ken times 20 could help with the Cell Juniors, especially in the anime version. Piccolo was the MVP of the Cell Junior battle, but I still don't think it would be enough overall, as condition and energy were in the Cell Junior's favor. An interesting change might be during the Gohan Cell Beam struggle, where Piccolo could use a special beam cannon with the Kaio-Ken times 20 amp to distract Cell way more, taking him off his game and helping Gohan win earlier. That's a possibility depending on how strong Kaio-Ken times 20 Piccolo is. But as for the Buu arc, a times 20 amp on Piccolo would make zero difference throughout the whole arc, and I still think he would get stone spat on him by Dabura. Then he just gets chopsticked in Battle of Gods by Beerus, but might get a good victory over Frost in the Universe 6 battle thanks to the Kaio-Ken amp. And that's so far I'll go, because like I said, there are so many factors at play. Basically, Kaio-Ken for Piccolo would be more effective earlier in the story, as times 20 buffs during Dragon Ball Super and GT are almost pointless when it comes to the power jumps that take place in both shows, but still, a fun turn of events either way. I haven't really talked about Krillin, Yamcha, and Tien much in terms of how it would benefit them. The only one I can see it would make a huge difference with is on Tien, especially if he combined it with the Neo Tri-Beam. Based on the power amp the Tri-Beam already gave Tien against Cell and Boo-Tanks' blast, a Kaio-Ken Tri-Beam would probably blast the entire Z villain cast all the way to New Namek. But then Tien will likely die from using too much life force in one go, sacrificing his life like the role model that he is.
Now let's talk Namekian fusion. Let's talk about how much power Piccolo gets when fusing with Kami. Like I said, I do have a headcanon theory on why I put him at that level, so do hear me out before you go nuts with all your own headcanon multipliers that don't even officially exist. You'll like this. So as you all know, this is the manga only, not the anime. It's the manga only. The manga. Being almost 4 times stronger in Dragon Ball is absolutely no joke. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Super Saiyan 2 to Super Saiyan 3 is a 4 times boost. So I want you to think of that magnitude of power and performance when Super Saiyan 2 fought Fat Buu compared to Super Saiyan 3. Think of it that way. But then some may think, well, Piccolo is a Super Namekian, and it's just like a Super Saiyan, so it must be times 50. I see where you're coming from, I really do, but this was literally hype dialogue for Piccolo's power-up. It was Piccolo's turn for a power-up, because it was about Super Saiyans for far too long at that point. Piccolo getting a 50 times boost and then only matching Android 17 would be extremely underwhelming for 50 times Piccolo. Piccolo was a monster before fusion. He grew so strong. In fact, look how easy he could deal with Dr. Gero, and then look at Super Saiyan Vegeta taking on Android 19. Those androids were roughly the same. So yes, even though Vegeta is above Piccolo, Piccolo wasn't insanely out of the picture. He had a lot of plot power before fusing with Kami, and there's nothing stating a Super Namekian is 50 times. So that would also be rivaling headcanon. But when we look at Nail fusing with Piccolo, Nail actually praised Piccolo's power, where Nail was at 42,000. Piccolo's exact power when arriving on Namek was unknown at that point, but it's reasonable to say he was relative to Nail. But either way you want to cut the cake, Piccolo's new power put him rivaling second form Frieza in the 1 million range, making the fusion on Namek easily a 20 times increase for Piccolo or Nail alone. But why is the fusion on Namek so much stronger as an amp than the fusion between Kami and Piccolo right now? Well, first of all, remember there is no set multiplier for it. Secondly, think of the fusion parts. Nail was as strong as Piccolo, possibly even stronger, so Piccolo is joining with someone close to his own power, and that granted a power up of over 20 times for him. That's a big deal. That's getting a huge benefit right there. Imagine Android Saga Piccolo fusing with Android Saga Piccolo. That would be insane. What is the benefit of fusing with Kami from a power perspective? Hell, you could even put Piccolo at whatever power level you want at this point in the Android Saga. Near Frieza, over Frieza, whatever. But I'm asking you, what benefit does someone with Piccolo's current power have with fusing with someone like Kami and his power level of 220, which was stated in source material? Look at it this way, what good would Frieza have by combining with someone not even a quarter of the power of a Cyberman? Exactly, and we know Piccolo is stronger than Frieza here in the Android Saga. So from a power standpoint, would this Piccolo, this stronger Piccolo, gain a 20 times boost by fusing with a power level of 220? No, it's not reasonable to say that at all. But why has he got nearly a 4 times boost? That still feels crazy for Kami's power level, right? It can't benefit him that much, surely. Well, this is where the Nameless Namekian comes into. You see, my headcanon reason why Piccolo got stronger was not due to a power-up from combining 2 strong levels of power. No, I don't think that's the case at all. The reason why he got stronger was because the merger was an awakening of locked power of the original being of the Nameless Namekian. That was unlocked when they joined back together, awakening a dormant power, and in my theory, that would be available at any point if they decided to merge back together. Hence why it was implied through the story that the Super Namekian would have the power to beat the Saiyans or Frieza if they merged. Awakening that power would blitz anything pre-Frieza with ease. Think about it, the fusion between Kami and Piccolo cannot be a set times 20 or hell, even a times 50, because let's say Piccolo in the Saiyan saga fused with Kami then. Times 50 Piccolo and Kami back then. What's that, a power level of a couple of thousand plus Kami's 220? Times 50, it's barely in the 100,000 power level range. That would never be enough to defeat Frieza. Hell, even an Uzaru Vegeta. So the Super Namekian being a 50 times multiplier just doesn't add up, considering the dialogue and its hype way before the Android saga. And it makes more sense for Kami and Piccolo's merger to be an awakening of a set amount of power, rather than looking at it as a fusion boost, because Kami was worthless and had no power to give. All he could give was knowledge and becoming the original being that he once was. That's where the power comes from, not necessarily the Namekian fusion power amp. So I hope you like that headcanon. I think it's reasonable, but hey, we're all different and this is only numbers at the end of the day, guys. Piccolo vs Android 17 is one of the greatest fights in Dragon Ball history, and a fight which was rudely interrupted by Cell, Dragon Ball Z's main villain at the time. It has always interested me when discussing this with friends regarding Piccolo vs Android 17, about what would the most likely outcome would have been if the two continued to fight each other. In this video, I will give you the truth to that answer, the one you've been searching for. Be sure to hit that like button if you're a fan of this fight, and comment below who you would think would win and why, but I urge you to stay until the end to hear my answer first. Bearing in mind, the answer you will get today isn't going in line with dramatic and cinematic story aspects. What I mean is, the story was building up for the Ascended Saiyans to emerge and save the day, so Piccolo had to step aside when Cell got near. But none of that matters in this video. We are keeping it grounded and containing the Piccolo vs 17 fight in its own little bubble of A vs B, skills and abilities, and pretending Cell nor the Saiyans showed up at all. And for this, we will be using the manga only to get the most accurate answer in terms of the main Dragon Ball Z continuity. So let's jump straight into chapter 172 of the manga, where the androids show up and square off against Piccolo. Now straight away we see Piccolo with a lot of bravado and confidence in his new power, a very Piccolo-esque thing to do. Ask Piccolo on Namek for that. He did not know the full extent of 17's power, but also at this point we have to remember Android 17 is just as cocky and assured of his own power, kind of similar to how he was against Cell. So straight away, the weakness of both these fighters is that at some point in the fight, they will have the weakness to lower their guard significantly by being overconfident in their own ability, and that could cost them both greatly. But let's dive into this further. In terms of a powerful ability that gives Android 17 an edge, the Android Barrier seems to be able to handle one of Piccolo's most devastating attacks, but it is unknown if it could stop a concentrated beam, the Makankosupo, or a thunderous amount of chi in the Makosen. So we will ignore that for now. It must be known that its stated 17 is faster, but weaker in terms of raw power to Piccolo. Piccolo says his punches aren't much, and for a character who has a regenerative capability, even just the smallest amount of regen to stitch up minor bruising and aches, Piccolo may indeed have the juice to continuously heal very small damages that 17 puts out, prolonging the fight even more. Unless 17 has the power to cause a serious amount of damage in one blast to Piccolo, Piccolo won't have to sacrifice his stamina greatly to regenerate to that degree. We need to consider that too. It's stated again Piccolo is as strong as 17, this time by Android 18. Obviously she cannot sense power, but that's in the narration. Obviously this could fluctuate depending on Piccolo's condition. He may have been physically stronger in the first half, but then as the time goes on, his output would indeed dip. Which leads us to the critical dialogue by Android 17 towards the end. We may have equal strength, but your stamina is running low. My engine is infinite. And he makes a very good point. Up until that point, the fight had been pretty equal, no doubt about it. Now at this point in the story, Cell shows up. It's pretty obvious at this point Cell manhandles both Piccolo and 17 without any effort, and both fighters look like train wrecks. And this is where we see Piccolo's light grenade, his final attack before appearing completely out of juice. He's then destroyed by Cell. The light grenade is a critical move that would indeed make a huge difference in the fight with Android 17 if they continued fighting. Firstly, it didn't take a long time to charge up. The anime made it seem like forever, but the manga shows Piccolo getting up on his feet, charging it, and firing it while Cell was still on the approach. This smashed Cell across the map and into the ocean. but with no damage due to Cell's power. However, we cannot deny the force of that move if it hits someone weaker, like Android 17. If the fight with Piccolo and 17 continued, this would be Piccolo's only saving grace to defeat Android 17. Could he connect it? Possibly, if Android 17 acts in the least bit cocky, or considering Piccolo pulled it off fairly quickly with Cell approaching. There's a good chance he could surprise 17 and connect it. Would it penetrate his android barrier though? That is not able to be answered, but it could go either way. I feel if 17 blocked it, I feel he would end up beating up the worn out Piccolo until he's out cold, but not killing him. However, if the light grenade did go through the barrier or hit 17, I feel this is where 17 would hit the point of no return in the fight. You see, androids have unlimited energy, they don't use chi as stated in the newest Dragon Ball Super manga chapters. It's simply just energy, but we have to realize something, 17 is still human, he is flesh and blood, modified at the cellular level. Now, organic beings can still be hurt. 17 is not immortal, as shown when Cell is whipping him. He's showing signs of pain and suffering. This means 17's arms or knees could be broken if something strong enough hit them. My point being, damage sustained affects your energy and power, and the truth behind that is, you could drink a million Red Bulls bro, but if your ligaments or tendons are shattered, you ain't punching as hard as you could fresh. Now, Piccolo was punching 17 pretty hard in the fight. I'm not saying 17 was running out of energy, but the injuries and pounding he sustained had to affect the amount of damage he could dish out. It's biological. If you're damaged, you can't project the energy efficiently or at your strongest. So Piccolo damaging 17, and also claiming 17's punches aren't much, would only result in Piccolo being damaged less and less as the battle progressed further to its ending. And if 17 is getting damaged, and producing weaker punches, even with unlimited stamina, unlimited weak punches is going to struggle against a Namekian regenerating and healing weak damage over time, especially in the last moments of the fight. All I'm going to say is the fight would literally come down to a battle of attrition, possibly with them both being battered onto the ground. It could even be a draw, or it would come down to one mistake in that last moment. If Piccolo cashes his chips in on that light grenade and fails, he loses. If it hits 17, 17 I feel would be hurt so bad, possibly injured, that Piccolo could have mounted him and punched his lights out. I don't think a special beam cannon would have worked because it takes that little bit longer to charge and requires a steadier target to hit with its smaller beam. But if that did hit 17 somehow, it has more of a chance to penetrate the android barrier as well and possibly kill 17, because he's still human and cannot heal. But if I was a betting man, I would say Android 17 would win 6 times out of 10, but nobody should ever count out Piccolo in this fight, his abilities, and should definitely stop overestimating the infinite energy in terms of what it means through battle logistics. It's only one factor in maintaining your strength, your health and hit points are another thing. I still think there's more of a chance of 17 just gradually overpowering Piccolo though as the battle goes on. It does make a lot more sense, but we also have to factor in everything I just said about decreasing the damage, and abilities of Piccolo to self-repair minor injuries to stay alive in those last moments. Android 17 cannot heal, and one serious injury to him would remain for the whole fight. If 17 would have won, he wouldn't have killed Piccolo in my opinion, he would have continued to search for Goku or have encountered Cell, to which 16 would then interfere and similar events would take place. But if Piccolo had managed to slug it out and beat down 17, I don't know, snap his neck or something, I feel Android 18 would rage out in seeing her twin brother die and kill off the leftovers of Piccolo. Android 16 wouldn't get involved, he would just watch from afar, fly away and search for Goku, and look back at Android 17 as a goddamn disgrace.
The Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z and beyond would change forever if Piccolo had travelled to New Namek after the Cell games. In this what if, I'll have Piccolo travel to see the other Namekians within the first year of the time skip. He seeks to learn more about himself, the Namekians, and to gain further strength to help protect Earth, as he felt disappointed in his own lack of strength to stop Cell alone. Piccolo would help the Namekians as much as he could throughout the 5 years he spent there. For this, they would be grateful that the Super Namekian was helping build. In contrast to the last time the Super Namekian left Namek, it underwent a cataclysm. After training his mind and wisdom with the other Namekians for 5 years, rather than just training by himself, Piccolo would reach a new level of power slightly higher than what he would have compared to his regular Buu saga self, but not above Super Perfect Cell. We could consider him getting closer to regular Perfect Cell. Piccolo would feel like his limits have been reached in terms of his potential and would raise his concerns about him not being able to protect the Earth if a new threat like Cell would ever emerge. The new Namekian Elder Mori? would suggest that the Dragon Balls may be of use to Piccolo. Although this was traditionally against Namekian's rules, using the Dragon Balls for self-gain, this was a special situation because Piccolo had helped them for a number of years, and Mori wanted to thank Piccolo and to also help Piccolo become stronger to help protect the Earth alongside Dende. This was technically Mori choosing to use the Dragon Balls for another good cause with good intention, not for himself, so technically not breaking a Namekian Dragon Ball rule. Porunga helps unlock Piccolo's potential, to the point he acquires his awakened form. However, he would not get the freebie of Orange Piccolo from Porunga as he did with Shenron on Earth in Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Consider the reason that Shenron on Earth has more of a bond with Piccolo than Porunga does. But with that being said, Piccolo would acquire the ultimate Piccolo type of power that we see in the Dragon Ball Superhero movie. Of course, pre-Buu Saga Piccolo isn't as strong as the Piccolo at the start of Dragon Ball Super Superhero, due to him not training as much and improving through raw training for many years. And naturally, power creeps. But in terms of potential, unlocked for his current level of body, he's at his peak now, just before the Buu Saga. Consider it like Gohan's potential being unlocked on Namek, unleashing during the Cell games, and then being unlocked when he's older, by the old Kai. Characters are capped during certain arcs for different reasons, so for an estimation in power growth, Piccolo's awakened form, for the moment he's in the Buu Saga, would put his current available peak higher than Super Saiyan 2 Goku and Vegeta, but not quite the level of Fat Buu or Super Saiyan 3. A fair jump, but nothing overkill, and this is just my opinion for the sake of this what if. So for the final 2 years of the time skip, Piccolo would return to Earth as normal, to where he would maintain and practice with the power he acquired. He wouldn't get much stronger at all in this time, but he would become more efficient in using his maximum potential. The Buu Saga would proceed as normal, to the first main landmark, where Piccolo faces the Supreme Kai. Whilst en route to Babidi's spaceship, this would lead to Piccolo evading Dabura's stone spit due to being much faster and more alert than ever before, where only Krillin gets hit. Inside the spaceship, Piccolo wouldn't take part in the rock, paper, scissors, and he wouldn't be eager to fight in this gauntlet as the Saiyans. That is until Dabura shows himself, where Piccolo is a bit pissed about Dabura trying to turn into stone earlier. He wants to continue this fight one-on-one because it's personal now. Demon King versus King of the Demon Realm. Extremely fitting. Gohan was expecting his turn, but Piccolo tells him to stand down as this is personal, plus he's aware Gohan is rusty and should have been training more. Gohan listens to his mentor and stands down. Piccolo fights Dabura, and the two have an extremely gritty brawl, worthy of a Demon King matchup. Dabura notices that Piccolo has evil in his heart and considers retreating to tell Babidi, but Piccolo awakens his dormant power and grabs Dabura with his extended arms, preventing him from escaping, and he completely annihilates him before he can retreat. I would like to think Dabura spat stone on Piccolo's arm at one point and he just ripped it off to stop the spread. That would be nostalgic. There would be no Majin Buu resurrection due to the fact the group soon return and stop Babidi, and the Supreme Kai could do what he want with Buu's egg. The Buu Saga threat ends quickly. The tournament is already concluded and those events remain the same, but Vegeta would still want to fight Goku even when he knew Goku already surpassed his power after seeing the way he killed Yakon. They would take their fight to the mountains as Goku would be happy fighting one-on-one with no threat of Buu going on. Vegeta would fight until he fell as Super Saiyan 2 Goku was stronger than his Super Saiyan 2 power without the Majin boost. Goku wins their battle and Vegeta walks away in silence. He would respect Kakarot after this, but wouldn't say it. He realizes he must continue to get stronger, plus Piccolo is now the strongest on Earth, with Goku not around, so there's another goal for Vegeta to train to overcome. Of course, Super Saiyan 3 is never revealed either. Gohan doesn't even get his power unlocked. Before long, the 24 hours of Goku being on Earth would be up, and he would return to the other world, and everything would continue as normal, but without Goku around. That is until one day, Beerus wakes up, and who knows exactly what events would transpire without Goku and the Super Saiyan God present. Oh, and no Majin Buu to fight Beerus over Puddin'. What happens? Nobody knows. Only the power of the pen can determine that outcome.